Hi and welcome to my blog. I've mentioned previously that video is a genre I've dabbled with on and off several times over the years. Indeed, if you go back 40 years, you'll find me with a cine camera spraying and praying, as the saying goes. In the 1980s I had two slide projectors. I went through agonies trying to synchronise the two together with music to produce slideshows with dissolves and transitions. But all manual, of course, and only the most skilled could really do it justice. Being a completely manual process meant that no two performances were ever exactly the same. Heady stuff, but also clunky, time-consuming, and needing true devotion to master the craft. This impatient teenager never stood a chance in hindsight. So, by way of some more practice on editing together footage and creating a story, I went in search of an old external hard drive this week, which I was hoping to find video footage from 2015 or 2016. Now, August 2016 was the last time I got the urge to dabble, and I know that the footage from a long weekend away, for example, has never been looked at in the rough, let alone used within a video. I've definitely made more progress this time around compared to any previous foray into digital video making. I've got some videos on file from 5 years ago when I made a few video diaries as part of my OCA studies, but these do not have the production values that are close to approaching the current standards. Not that they're that high in June 2017. One thing that is sure though, I can do in an hour or two now what might have taken 5 times as long even 12 months ago. One thing I find difficult to judge is how much movement should there be. Video differs to stills photography in that single element, movement. Real, actual movement and not just implied movement such as that produced by long exposures. Should I lock the camera on a tripod and rely on movement within the frame? Should I pan every shot regardless? How far should I move the camera? Up, down, side to side, crazy tilts? Now, I'm not naive enough to think that one size fits all, and that if I ask an expert I will get any answer other than one starting with, it depends. One way to form my own opinion is to watch other people's films, and I've done a lot of that recently. When watching instructional videos on the web, I've realised that I'm not simply taking in the content, but I'm also looking at camera angles, how they've cut the footage together, whether the shots are static or panned, how many different transitions have they used across the piece. Now, watching other people's work, the good, the bad and the indifferent, is incredibly instructive and helps to form an idea of what works for me, which in turn informs how I tackle a task. I've been using simple crossfade transition, for example, in my editing. Partly because I think a lot of the others look cheesy, and partly because I've not fully explored the options available. In the last diary update I used the wipe effect on a couple of sequences because it just seemed to fit. One piece of advice I read recently was to try to stick with just one style of transition across a video, varying it only when the subject warrants it. Now, this makes sense. Some videos I watch seem to employ every transition known to Final Cut, and I'm usually left with a feeling that the editor is simply emptying his bag of tricks to show his knowledge, rather than suiting the transition to the subject. I guess that this realisation is part of the learning process. For me, the learning process is a combination of my own experience, the advice from the online course I'm working through, together with a more critical review of the many videos I watch online every week. The other piece of advice I regularly encounter relates to the importance of audio, and I have to say I've turned off more videos for poor audio than poor content. Even the best visual content struggles to keep my interest when combined with poor audio. I did a blog post a few weeks ago about my studio in the closet, and I'm still using this setup at the moment. Although I have drafted in a small table so I can sit on a chair rather than the floor. You may remember the squeaky floorboards I spoke of. I'm now listening even more critically to the audio quality of my own recordings and starting to think about how to improve them further. My Heath Robinson setup gives vastly superior quality compared to recording the voiceover at my desk, but such is the nature of things that I'm starting to think about how it can be improved further. And most of the footage I've used here was shot at least 10 months ago. It's never been used elsewhere, and it wasn't created expressly for this video, although as it happens it's the subject of this narrative. Looking at the collection of clips, I can see that I was capturing what took my eye, which is no bad thing. But I wasn't thinking about the overall narrative. There's a lot of the bigger picture, for example. There's a lot of wide scenes, but there's fewer cutaways or intimate details. I've not shot many introductory pieces to help with scene setting, or clips that can be used to transition out of one location to another. Now, all this comes with experience and practice, and the more I try to create little stories on the Final Cut timeline, the more I appreciate the need for the clips to move the story between the main subjects. This is one difference for me in terms of mindset, the mindset of a stills photographer compared to the videographer. It's not a huge difference if you're the type of stills worker that likes to tell stories with your images, and therefore likes to create sets of images that work together. But nevertheless, there is a difference, and for me it comes down to quantity. So let me try to explain. If I'm working on a panel of still images, I might look for one introductory image and one closing image to work with, say, 10 main images. Now with video, I find that I need several clips, each of 4 to 8 seconds, to cut together to introduce, link and exit each scene. I'm not therefore looking for the single telling image to set the scene, but a sequence of small clips to do the same job. It's an example of the crossover between the two disciplines, and also I think the differences between the two. I suspect that a stills photographer who concentrates on the single image, rather than creating a series of complementary images, will find the transition more difficult. So, where does this leave us? Well, the main takeaway from this exercise in my mind is the need to shoot to the edit. And I don't just mean shooting more than you think you'll need, which is another oft-quoted piece of advice. So, until next time, bye for now.